Okay, this is called Eddie Hoover's The World, and I'm going to read it for the first time to my niece Lola. Lola, how old are you?
5.
5, okay, cool, alright. And what company do you work for?
7.
Okay, this is a story of Eddie and how he hoovered up the whole of the world until it vanished completely. It all started on a Sunday morning. Eddie thought Sundays were great for 5 things. Number 1, playing music really loudly. Number 2, eating jam on toast in the morning. Number 3, being driven into town to buy loads of chocolate at his favourite sweet shop. Number 4, playing football with Danny, who was Eddie's best friend and who lived next door. And number 5, watching Snotty Nigel, which was Eddie's number 1 cartoon in the whole wide world. There was only one catch. It was Eddie's job to hoover the living room every Sunday. Eddie didn't mind doing the hoovering on every Sunday. In fact, he loved it. He put on his homemade spacesuit and pretended he was hoovering whilst on the moon. His spacesuit was made from cardboard boxes and tin foil. It looked flippin' awesome. After hoovering, like every Sunday, Eddie was in his bedroom playing his music really loudly. Suddenly, his dad burst in. He was quite angry. "Eddie, turn that music down, please." "Oh, bloomin' heck, Dad. You know I always play music loud on a Sunday morning." "Yes, I know, Eddie, but today I have a real bad headache." And with that, Eddie's dad turned off the speakers. "That's unfair," Eddie shouted as his dad walked out of the room. Eddie loved his Sunday jam on toast, but there was no jam on toast on the kitchen table. Instead, there was a bowl of cornflakes. "Cornflakes? Oh yes, sorry Eddie. We have run out of bread, so you can't have jam on toast this morning." "Flippin' heck," Eddie shouted again. "Eddie, don't speak to me like that, please. I'll buy some bread when we go to town today, and as a treat, I promise that you can have jam on toast for breakfast tomorrow before school." Eddie huffed as he forced himself to eat the boring cornflakes. Do you like cornflakes?
No.
Okay. Nor does Eddie. He loved the car ride into town on a Sunday with his mum, as he knew that it meant it was time to go to the sweet shop. But there was a slight problem. The car wouldn't start. "Eddie, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to walk into town. The car won't start." "What?" Eddie cried. "I don't want to walk. It'll take ages." "Oh, Eddie, it'll only take 10 minutes. Come on, it's a lovely sunny day," his mum said. On the walk to town, Eddie cheered himself up with the thought of the sweets he would buy. Fizzy coloured bottles, strawberry laces and chocolate buttons.
Strawberry laces.
Do you like those, yeah? However, as they got near the sweet shop door, they noticed a sign. It read, "Due to a staff shortage, we are sorry to announce that the shop will be closed all day Sunday." "What? Blinking flip!" Eddie yelled in a temper. His mum tried to calm him down. "I'll pop back tomorrow and buy you some sweets from here. That way, when you finish school, they'll be waiting for you." "Tomorrow is ages away," Eddie yelled. When they got back home, Eddie grabbed his football from the front garden and went next door to knock for Danny. Danny answered the door. To Eddie's surprise, he was in his pyjamas and had spots all over his face. What's happened to you?" Eddie asked. "Hey Eddie, I've got chickenpox, which means that I'm ill and I've got spots all over my face." "What?" Eddie cried. "Yeah, sorry, I should be better by next Sunday, so we can play football then." Danny shut the door. "Flippin' flippity flip!" Eddie yelled. Now Eddie was quite angry. He sat down to watch Snotty Nigel, which was his favourite TV show, but suddenly a news report interrupted the cartoon. "We interrupt Snotty Nigel to give you a breaking news story," the newsreader said. "What?" Eddie screamed at the top of his lungs. The newsreader said the following. "NASA, the American Space Company, have lost a very powerful Hoover."
Who's NASA?
It's an American space company. And they've lost a very powerful Hoover. If you if you see it, do not go near it. It is very dangerous, and it has the power to hoover up anything in the whole world. Anybody that sees the Hoover is advised to contact us straight away. We now have an hour-long feature live from NASA, the American Space Company.
What does NASA mean?
American Space Company. Yeah. Although Eddie thought it was really cool that a Hoover had the power to suck up anything in the whole world, he was by now full of anger that his favourite cartoon ever had been interrupted. "This is the worst day ever," he said. As he ran upstairs to his room, he laid on his bed and cried into his pillow. There was a knock at his bedroom door. It was his dad. Eddie, it's your dad. Although you may have had a bad day, me and your mum just want to let you know that we love you very much. Oh, and thank you for doing the hoovering today. Yeah? Well, I'm not blinking, flipping, blooming, flippity, flipping doing the hoovering ever blooming again, alright? Eddie screamed, the loudest he could. Okay, Eddie, well, good night. Eddie didn't answer his dad. He was too busy crying. He thought about every bad thing that had happened to him that day. I couldn't play my music loud because of Dad's headache. I couldn't eat jam on toast because there was no bread. I had to walk into town because the car wouldn't start. I couldn't buy sweets from my favourite sweet shop because of staff shortage. Danny had chicken pox, so I couldn't play football with him. And to top it all off, I couldn't watch my #1 cartoon ever, Snotty Nigel, because it was interrupted by a news report about a missing Hoover. He went to sleep and hoped that tomorrow would be better. Now, he woke up in the middle of the night with a blue light flashing through his bedroom window. He poked his head out and saw the blue light was coming out of a cloud of smoke that was next to the shed. What the bloomin' heck is that? He tiptoed to the back door and slowly turned the key and pushed it open. He trod on the grass and walked towards it. As he got closer, he heard a strange noise that was getting louder and louder. It sounded like electronic blips and blops and pings and pongs. He walked through the cloud of smoke and to his amazement, there sat a little shiny silver Hoover. There was a tiny silver Hoover bag with a Hoover pipe attached to it. The little bag had letters NASA written on its side. Could it be the NASA Hoover that the newsman talked about? The exact Hoover that was powerful enough to hoover up anything in the whole world? There was only one way to find out. There were 3 buttons on top of the Hoover pipe. One was green and it had the word start on it. The next was red and it had the word stop on it. And the third was blue and it had the word empty on it. He pointed the Hoover pipe at a leaf on the grass. He pushed the green button that said start. The Hoover made a whirling, swirling sound and hoovered up the leaf straight away. Eddie pressed the stop button and the Hoover stopped its noise. Remembering that the newsman said it could hoover up anything, he thought he would try something bigger and he held the Hoover at the garden shed. Once again he pressed the start button. Eddie looked on in wonder as the shape of the shed made its way down the Hoover pipe. He pressed the stop button. Wow! Eddie shouted in excitement. He noticed that the little silver Hoover bag had grown in size a tiny bit. He thought it might be a good idea now to test the blue button that said empty. He clicked on it and he heard a few noises and saw a bit more smoke. First the shed came back out of the Hoover pipe and then the leaf came out. What was extra great was that they were all put back in the exact same place that they were before. Eddie whooped with joy. Just then his mum pushed open the bedroom window and started yelling at him. Eddie, what on earth are you doing in the garden? It's 12:15 at night. You're grounded. It was then that Eddie got his idea. Maybe I could hoover up the things that annoy me just for one day, and then I could empty them all back out the day after. He pointed the Hoover pipe up towards his mum, who was still shouting. Mum, please don't be angry with me, but I want tomorrow off of school, so I'm going to hoover you up for a day. He pressed the start button and sure enough, Eddie's mum went flying out of the window and up the Hoover pipe. Eddie's dad came to the window to see what all the fuss was about. What's going on here? He shouted. Dad, please don't be angry, but I want to play my music loud tomorrow. He then pressed the start button and his dad went whizzing up the Hoover pipe. He woke up at 9:01 the next morning and looked at his new Hoover friend and said, today is going to be the best day ever. His parents' room was totally parentless, so he played his music really loud. He then knocked on Danny's door. Danny was still in his pyjamas and he still had spots all over his face. Oh hi Eddie, I've still got chicken pox, so I still can't come out to play. Anyway, how comes you're off school? Because, Danny, I found this really cool Hoover from NASA and I can suck anything up. So I sucked up my parents and now I don't have to go to school. Hang on, Danny said, you've sucked up your parents into the Hoover. Yeah, but it's not as bad as it sounds. There's a blue empty button here. I'm going to empty them back out into the world tonight. I just want to have a really cool day first, Eddie replied, now really excited. Right, it looks cool, Eddie, but I am ill today. Listen, I better go back to sleep. See you soon, Danny said in a nervous voice. Eddie got so angry that Danny didn't want to spend the day hoovering things up with him that he aimed the Hoover pipe at Danny's house and pressed the start button. The whole of Donny's house disappeared up into the Hoover. Whoops, Eddie whispered. He thought about pressing the empty button straight away, but then changed his mind. Maybe I can keep Danny and his dad and his household in the Hoover just for a few hours to teach them a lesson. He took the Hoover to the high street and went into the sweet shop. Sorry, Mr. Sweet Shop Man, I'm just going to hoover you up for the day so I can eat all the sweets I want. The sweet shop man went whooshing up the Hoover pipe. He filled up one coat pocket with fizzy cola bottles, another with strawberry laces, and another pocket with chocolate buttons. Danny noticed a massive shadow on the wall. The Hoover bag that was once a little silver bag had now grown into a giant-sized bag that towered over him. He had now hoovered up his mum, his dad, Danny and his household, and now the sweet shop owner. I wonder what other fun I can have before I press the empty button, he said. He walked past the toy shop and thought to himself, if I could hoover up the shop owner for the day, then I could get a brilliant new toy from the toy shop. He walked into the toy shop and aimed the Hoover pipe at the toy shop owner. He pressed start, and the toy shop owner went whooshing up the Hoover pipe. But this time, when he went to press the stop button, the button would not work. No matter how many times he pressed it, it would not stop. Crumbs, he gulped, as he watched all of the toy store being sucked up into the Hoover pipe. Eddie knew just what to do. He ran home as fast as he could and left the Hoover sucking up the whole of the high street. Once back in his house, he put the homemade special spacesuit on that he always did the hoovering in. Just as he had put the space helmet on, he ran outside of the house. Sure enough, the NASA Hoover was outside of his home. It sucked up all of his town and was just about to suck up Eddie's house. Eddie grabbed onto the Hoover pipe, and before he knew it, he was in space with the Hoover. The Hoover had hoovered up the whole of the planet Earth, and Eddie was left there floating in space, still holding on to the Hoover pipe. The Hoover bag was now humongous, as you can imagine. The Hoover made the sound of electronic blips and blops and pings and pongs, and smoke came out. Suddenly, it stopped sucking everything up and just came to a grinding halt. Smoke poured out of it. Eddie pressed all 3 buttons, but nothing worked. One of the many problems with being stuck in space with a broken NASA Hoover that sucks up the whole of Earth was that there was nowhere to sit. The only place he could see that might provide somewhere to sit down was the moon. Still with the Hoover in his hand, Eddie swam over to it and sat down. He looked around. Everything seemed really quiet. Suddenly, all the things that annoyed him didn't seem so annoying anymore. It wasn't Dad's fault that he had a headache and I couldn't play my music loud, he said. It wasn't Mum's fault that the car wouldn't start and that we had to walk into town. He started crying. It wasn't Danny's fault that he had chicken pox and his head was all spotty. It wasn't the sweet shop owner's fault that there was no staff to cover the shop. He listed all of the things that had annoyed him. Looking out into space and seeing all them stars, he realised that the little things that had bugged him weren't really that annoying after all. I wish I could just have everything back to normal. I'd never be horrid again. As he started to cry, he accidentally leant his head on the blue empty button. With his eyes still closed, Eddie didn't realise that the Hoover had started to work again. When he opened his eyes, he was back in his bed. He looked around and everything seemed to be back to normal. He ran into the kitchen and his mum was just pouring him a bowl of cornflakes. Good morning, Eddie. Really sorry, but we've run out of bread, so you can't have any jam on toast today. Eddie ran up to his mum and gave her the biggest cuddle ever. I don't care, Mum. Cornflakes are flipping great. I love you. His mum seemed really surprised at how happy Eddie was. His dad came downstairs and Eddie started telling them both about what had happened last night. I hoovered up the whole world with a Hoover made by NASA, and I thought I'd never see you again, he cried. Oh, Eddie, we all have crazy dreams sometimes like that now and then, his dad said as he hugged him. I will never be naughty again, Eddie said as he leaned on his dad's shoulder. Just then, he saw a flash of blue light and a cloud of smoke by the shed. The end. Did you like it? Yeah?
What did you like about it,
What did you
Lola?
like about it?
The Hoover.
The Hoover bit,
Wow.
yes. Make sure you do the Hoovering.
What'd you say? Say, I like your book.
Like your
Now look at Andrew, say, I like your book.
left a bit.
You love the book? Love the book, she said, so that's good. Cool. High five.
She left you
Where's my
hanging.
hand? My hand. High
She
five.
left you hanging.